So I'm here today with Dave Bradley. He's creative director for Duke Men's Basketball. And if you're not aware, Duke Men's Basketball has over 5.4 million followers across the major social accounts, and that makes them the number one most followed college sports team. In fact, they have more followers than Duke itself. So that's got to be interesting conversations in some meetings, Dave.
Now, everyone here, we're all on the same team, so it's all good.
So you've been creative director at Duke for about 6 years. In full disclosure, I've known you for years, and I'm a big Duke fan as well. But after you finished a stint as director of basketball operations, you moved into this creative director. Was that a big transition, or were you already sort of doing some of the social media and a recognition that social media was going to be important to the team?
Yeah, I basically, since I started here, my career sort of intersected with the emergence of social media, dating myself a little bit. So I guess you could say I was always sort of in charge or over our social media. And when the ops role opened up, I think, Coach K maybe saw in me like a creativity and maybe a passion that sort of transcended social and the type of work I was doing. So, in the ops role, while there's a lot of operational elements, there's a level of, thinking outside the box and being creative and having impacts outside social. So I took that role on. And then I think as I did that, we all saw, certainly around here and beyond, the prominence of social, the importance of it. And we had some staff kind of positions change. Nolan Smith was here. So it sort of made sense to pass the baton to him. And then I could focus more exclusively on our brand, on our social media. So it worked out well. I was basically juggling, both jobs, and ops is very, very time consuming. You're keeping the trains on time 24/7.
Yeah.
It never stops, texting players and communication with everyone in the program. So your mind space is like always on, even if it's what seems to be monotonous task. You got to be locked in. And so it's hard to kind of be on top of both. So it's been great. I think a good transition for me, and I think the program to move into this role for sure.
And one of the things we want to get from this conversation is for people who run other social media accounts, what can they learn from the success you've had at Duke? And, if you look at the programs that rank after Duke in most followers, they're also the Blue Bloods, Kentucky and UNC and Indiana and Kansas. So certainly it helps to win. Certainly it helps to win for year after year. But still, Duke's pretty far ahead of everybody. What decisions or approach do you think separated Duke from the rest?
Yeah, I would say a few things. First of all, of course, you have to start with the players, Coach K. All those other programs are significant. Blue Bloods, amazing success. I'll stack up our stories, our guys, our head coaches with any of them. So that gives you an edge and something that excites you every day to work with those level of guys. And then more specifically, as it relates to the work, I would say a few things. One, a competitive drive. I think I'm wired, since I was young, whether it was, social media or competing in a hockey game or, beating my friends in flag football in the yard or whatever. I've always been a competitive person. Obviously our program, and we're at our best. We pride ourselves on being that way. So there's a level of pride and competitiveness that drives the program, and certainly the social media creative unit. A big one, freedom and trust. Since I've been doing this, I think I earned Coach K's trust in particular, relatively early on in my career. And to his credit, once I think I earned that, he sort of trusted me to go and figure it out. So for a while, I was a one-man band without much oversight. There weren't big meetings. We had to run everything by everybody. It was, Dave, you got this. And then as we've grown and grown creative staff, it's still just our creative team for the most part. There's not as many chefs in the kitchen as some places. And to have, be more nimble, I think, we can really focus on us and our brand. And then, I would also add, we've been really 100% locked in on brand. Like there's been no sales plays with this. Our games are sold out. Very, very, very intentional about growing our following, really connecting and being real with our fans, like 100% of the time and all of our target audiences. Another point, continuity, just, this obviously is a field that has emerged quickly and everyone is trying to figure it out. And I've been in this role, for a long time where I think although we've had other people around me, having the same voice probably helps. And I think my relationship with the current and then former players as they move on, it helps. Of course, our program takes pride in the brotherhood and all that. So having folks that have been around and stayed in touch with those guys goes a long way. Definitely would have to add, support from Coach K all along, and obviously Coach Shire now, where although he didn't understand, not that he didn't understand what we were doing, he had many other fish to fry. He understood at a 20,000 full level that what we were doing was important and worthy of resources, worthy of his support, and whether that was salary position, access to the team being a big one, or we could be around a lot. That goes a long way. And then I think just the last thing I would say is consistency. We don't turn on in let's say September and end in April. Like, we're thinking about this thing 24/7 year round. How can we make it go? How can we keep the followers? How can we keep our audience growth up? So that's been, I think, super important too. Just being locked in on it for a long, long time.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of clients over the years try to manage their social media presence to the point where they're so slow in making decisions that they can't produce the volume of content, or they can't produce quality content, or they can't produce timely content. So that's all those things you said are really important. And speaking of what is Duke invested in to make you successful? We're talking to you. You're in the social media hub right now, and so there's physical space, which is at a premium in every university. So, but what kind of things has Duke invested in to help you and your team be successful?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is the space I'm in right now. I'll tell you a quick story about it. So, my career, like I said, when I started, I was a one-man band, kind of running everything, and then we realized we needed additional staff, so we brought on a creative content producer. At that time, it was just me and this other position, and so we were trying to figure out where this position was going to work. I already had an office up on the 5th floor here at Sports Butters, which you're familiar with, and so I thought maybe, hey, we have a video room in the K Center, our practice facility. Could he fit in there with our video guys? There's already a lot of equipment in there that we overlap on. And there's really, Coach K was like, hey, there's this, there's this position, there's opening Iron Duke's little area down here where we're now, which has become the creative hub. It was all Coach K's idea. So it's prime real estate. We got 2 offices, a meeting area where I'm in, little closet type room where we store all of our great equipment. So, and that was 100% Coach. I wasn't even thinking that. And then once you have the space, you go crazy and make it ours and make it special. So, and the Coach K court is right out here. Players eat over here, locker room over here. So you're intersecting with your key guys all the time. Your relationship building, earning that trust, significant. And then certainly staffing. I think I was probably the first position of my kind. Certainly I think as a men's basketball program, first basketball program to have a creative director and to have a full-time creative content producer. We've been out in front of everything for a long time, pretty consistently, and I think take pride in that. So, those 2 things, and that doesn't come without the support of really the higher ups, Coach K, the people around Coach, and obviously continued on here with Coach Shire.
I mean, yeah, you just talked about access, equipment, space. I mean, so many people think social media can be done cheaply, and it can be, and then nobody pays attention to it. So, but now you mentioned staff. How many people now are on the team full time? And do you have people who come in maybe during game day or March Madness? Or what's the team structure? People want to know. There's a lot of still one-man bands out there in the social media space. What's your band now?
Yeah, I think we've been able to build from just me trying to have to figure everything out. Now we have a full team, and so I'm able to think pretty strategically about in 2024, what are our content needs? Specifically, what are the skill sets that we need to thrive in 2024 for Duke men's basketball across all of our channels? And so, now we have really 4 full-time folks that spend 90 to 100% of their work lives around the hub, including me. So we just brought in a photographer this past year, Meg Lee. So she focuses mostly on photography. And then we have 2 full-time videographers as well, Nick Colosimo and Nolan Ellenberg. So those guys are cranking out long form content, short form content, helping with the vision of everything we're doing as well. They both add amazing perspective. It's not just me figuring everything out. We've got some folks that have been around it for a while that can add a lot of input. And then certainly we have students now that help us out. They go a long way in making this thing go. So, let's say on a game day, we have 4 students coming in, then we have 3 more on the side who do research type projects. And the students help a lot with phone content, having a student perspective. The older I get, some ways, as the less maybe I'm in tune with, the latest trends, certainly on platforms like TikTok, the latest music. I'm listening to Paw Patrol theme songs, not the latest
Yeah.
baby album sometimes now. So like I always been try to be probably something I learned from maybe seeing Coach K's lead, but being aware that like of what you don't know as much as you know, and then seeking out perspectives. And the students, I'm learning as much from them or more as they probably are learning from me and us. So having that has been huge. And as you know, as we all know, kind of the shift in content trend really heavy to iPhone. And I think we've stayed out in front there. We try to have, if I could, I would have someone filming every game, every moment on iPhone. And we do at home, trying to get there for road games. We have some road games covered, but and students have carried that for us. So, and then we have a graphic design network. Most of our graphic design work is actually outsourced. So we have a good budget for that, and some students that do it for cheap as well. At certain cases, we've had interns, that come on and get course credit. So graphic design network, kind of all over the world, all ages there too. So certainly, I think come a long way from just me trying to figure out. And back in the day, my dad even was like going on the road and my photographer and all this. So it's cool. It's cool to see how that part has grown. And it's fun to kind of have a team here within the team to to make this thing go.
It's nice. Your dad happens to be an excellent photographer too. So shout out to Mike. How do you know what's working? You post a fair amount of content. How do you know what's working in day to day? Obviously, you've been in this lead #1 for followers, but how do you know what's working in the middle of the season?
Yeah, obviously, it starts with identifying our goals and target audiences, and then having tools to see how everything is matching up. So we have quite a few tools. I think what we measure now has changed quite a bit. We're not just serving, Duke men's basketball social. A huge part of what we're doing is, assisting our players kind of on all aspects of the brand side. And we were doing that a little before NIL has become a huge thing here, but, helping them grow their following, making sure they have photos and video content, helping them understand what posts are hitting and what's not, and having the tools to be able to educate them there. So a few things. We're on Sprout Social, and of course use the in-app tools and the different apps. Have some customized like Google Sheets to keep track over, a course of time. We use an app called Influencer, which is helpful to both deliver content to our players and provide some data back to us on their social, both how often they're using the content we're giving them and some more insight on how they're using their social. Partner with Nielsen. Like most people probably heard of Nielsen as kind of one of the bigger companies that measures things like TV ratings and a lot more. So Nielsen has some other services that they have that we've used, to help us monitor some of the big picture, how we're moving and shaking on the social side. And then part of what we do too is sort of the storytelling of how hopefully how big our brand is, and some of those TV audience facts and figures. So that ends up being good content for us. So Nielsen helps there. Partnering with UTI to get more social media content around Duke MBB. They've been helpful on the player side, where we want to identify like how much value, let's say, Jared McCain social media post is worth. A Jared McCain Instagram or TikTok post, how much should he be able to get from a brand partner? So we're able to like have that info in our back pocket to help him manage the process. Of course, a guy like Jared and other guys have agents too, but we want to be able to be there for them if they need it and have that type of data to educate the guys and all that. And the last one, we use our cloud-based system on steroids. It's called Air, and Air provides me with great data, not just on it's not just a cloud service. It provides good data on who's using our all of our digital assets, how often, the sharing, all that process is important too. So I think those are some of the main tools that we use, and always trying to stay on top of what the latest and greatest is.
Yeah, I mean, people who don't do basketball social media, what I hear is a lot of analytics, a lot of different tools, and sort of employee advocacy almost. Now, you've got players and player advocacy, but there's so many companies that have engineers or directors or vice presidents who could better contribute to their social if they were supported more by the social media team. And so, what I'm hearing there, it definitely carries over into brands. But I want to loop back. You mentioned NIL. For those not familiar, it's name, image, and likeness. It's for students can now basically sell their name, image, and likeness, which was prohibited until the last couple of years. So now, social media prowess for a team, I imagine, is that part of the offer to a recruit now? Is that something a coach might talk to a high school player about? Duke can offer this sort of support to you growing your own brand?
Yeah, I think, the platform here, the Duke men's basketball platform and the brand opportunity is maybe our biggest differentiator in the recruiting process. I'm biased, but I think it is. And frankly, it has been for a number of years, from when Coach K built this thing and got it going. A lot of games on TV. Of course, you're part of Duke University and the network that goes along with that and all that. So it's been important, and we've tried to be on top of it for a lot longer than NIL has been sort of activated here for our student athletes. I started meeting with recruits 6 to 7 years ago. It's been part of our pitch for a long time. So, and then we've been very intentional about chasing some of the data and stories so we can kind of pitch to recruits like, we say bright lights, biggest stage. What does that mean for you? Why does it matter? And of course, like NIL is great now. And I think because of NIL, players, recruit families, parents, they're like more in tune to what we're doing. So it was like, hey, this is important. Like, part of what I do too has been like selling everyone around here that this is important. To your point, Jim, that you just had with, higher ups that aren't in our world. This came along, and then it was just huge from like an energy toward like, hey, like this is important. So we should have Dave and his team involved. We should invest even more resources in it because they can see the lights come on for some of these parents and families where, they really want to hear how Duke can help and see how it's important. And I think ultimately, yes, of course, you want to help these kids navigate the space while they're here for 1 to 4 years and make as much money as they can and on commercial brand deals and beyond. But you still want to recruit those families and recruits that can recognize the difference between like, okay, I'm going to make this amount of money, and then that's great while you're here for 1 to 4 years. But also, the bigger value add is like, this is a lifetime benefit. We're going to teach you how to use your brand, leverage your brand while you're here. We're going to teach you how Duke can help. Introduce you to all the things around Duke, whether it's our creative team and content on their behalf, and certainly beyond the Duke network, alumni base, the brotherhood, the former player network, all the things. So I think NIL, I guess, summarized, it's sort of been like a spark, a fuel on the fire that we already tried to have burning now to give us more momentum and more on our plates, frankly, to help out as much as we can.
One of the questions we get from most of our clients is, what should our posting cadence be? And now sports teams post more than others because, you get Kyle Filipowski doing a windmill dunk, you get Spencer Hubbard hitting a three-pointer, you get content constantly. But nevertheless, you have to figure out how much is too much, how much is not enough. How do you determine your posting cadence?
Yeah, overall, I would definitely say like we probably post like too much, I guess I would say, but at the same time, we're serving, obviously want to reach our target audience. We're also like representing our team. So if we were trying to just like do the perfect cadence, okay, we look at our data and analytics, like Jared McCain and Zion Williamson perform 2 to 5 to 20 times more than the average player. Let's just post, once a day or twice a day about them. And like, that's not what it's going to be. We have a good creative team here. We want to make sure that their work is shown. I think obviously representing our team, our players, we're not going to make this season the Jared McCain show or the Zion show. You want to make sure all your players are seen on social. So I think it's a balance there. You don't want to overpost, but sometimes you have to. And I think it's just trial and error and studying the analytics. It's pretty obvious there's sort of a sweet spot. Some of the analytical tools that we have, we even tell you, like Sprout Social, you should post at this time and this many posts, and you can kind of see, what happens when you maybe overpost, how engagement goes down and all that. So it's a balance. It's definitely, it's a lot to manage across all these channels now, and you got Threads and TikTok and all the different YouTube and all the different things. So YouTube Shorts. So it's hard to, I think, even with our size, as big as we've gotten as a creative team, we're still relatively small in the scheme of things, trying to serve all the platforms we do. So I wouldn't say we're like a 10 out of 10 with like perfect cadence, for the reasons I outlined.
Yeah. So last question, if you were talking to someone who was taking over a college sports team social media account, what would you tell them to do first? What were the first few things they should look at, actions they should take to really be successful?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you'd say the first, these aren't necessarily in order. Yeah. I think you'd love to have access to team. You don't want to be situated in a building over here, outside your gym or wherever that your team meets and frequents. You want to be like right here where we are, at the social media hub with the court and the locker room nearby. Certainly, I think, as you know, Jim, like in our world, if you're in charge of content, it is like it is so consuming of your mind space.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so many channels, so many platforms, following accounts, following player accounts. Like it's a lot, and your head is always spinning. And then you got to have a personal life and friends and family and coworkers. Being able to kind of like understand that, recognize that, and still put in time to relationship build, to build trust around your organization, with your players, with your team, because you got to get that trust in order to do the things that you're going to want to do. Certainly, I think on the front end, being intentional in those relationships, in those conversations with coaches, with the people around the program who are relevant to this convo, try to get a feel for what like their 20,000 zoomed out like perspective is, and then develop your kind of your content needs and goals so they feel a sense of ownership. But then where you also like, okay, I'm hearing from you, but like let me go, let me do my thing.
Yeah.
And I think that leads to the next point pretty well. It's something I've tried to do, and I think fortunately for us, where you've had head coaches that listen and understand, but there's a level of building buy-in strategically. Like you always wish you had more resources, you always wish you had better equipment, more, whatever. No matter what, like I could have double our stat, and everyone would be busy. So I think understanding like the different languages that are spoken amongst people in our space, like it's a different language that I might speak to, our student Jack Feldstein versus, obviously our photographer Meg Lee versus Coach Shire or versus Coach Lucas. Like it's just different. And I think you got to be able to like have both conversations, and then for my role, bring what you have here or working on the Creative Hub, kind of summarize up and out to the coaches and those types where they get it, they understand why it's important, and they want to invest more in it. Be able to tell the stories of your success, and then from there, I think the last thing is there are a lot of chefs in the kitchen now, and I think in the content world, the content space, and you have all these creative teams that are sort of thrown into the mix around what's a basketball business or whatever. You got other people doing other things. You got a medical team, you got coaches, you got the ops guy, you got the equipment, all these different folks, and then people who are outside the men's basketball program who may have an opinion as well. So I think drilling down to where, as like the head of the org of the creative team, having as much control as possible over content and staff, where someone's not saying, hey, I know Sally and she's really good and can she help? And it's like, well, Sally's great, but like she doesn't have any experience. I think like people I think can sometimes assume like, oh, I'm on Instagram, like I know Susan and she'll be great. It's like, no, this is like there's a level to this, and there's skill sets and experiences that are really important, and leaning in where you're gonna have the flexibility to bring in who you want as much as possible, I think really goes a long way, because if you end up with a content team that the pieces don't all fit, it becomes hard. So
absolutely. And again, I'm just sort of struck by how much of what you're saying just correlates to the business of social media for any sort of corporation. And I think about videos you do sometimes where the players are walking to the court and you have a sign up asking them a question. And it's not interrupting their day at all. They take 30 seconds and answer the question, and you get a really great piece of content because you have the access, because you're trusted to do that. And there's opportunities like that get missed in the business world all the time. So lots to take away. But thank you, Dave Bradley, Creative Director for Duke Men's Basketball. Appreciate you sharing your secrets.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Jim. Anytime.
Yeah.